So we're back on. It's Rodney, your CT 111 instructor. I'm interviewing Rob Thayer of RT Drywall. He's a guy that lives and breathes drywall. And Rob, we're going to start out with a little bio by you. Could you please tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the business and where the business is going, and just tell us about yourself.
Okay, I was born into the trades. My dad was a drywall contractor. He was broken in by his uncle back in the 50s. His uncle started drywall in the 40s. So my dad, having three sons, when we all hit, me and my brothers, when we hit 13, my dad took us out, put hammers in our hands, and we started learning basically what he knew as teenagers. And that was probably 1970, 71. Here we are almost 50 years later.
Yeah, 50 years plus later.
You know, I'm one of those guys. I went to college, graduated, came out, discovered I could probably make more money putting my tools back on, you know, and never looked back, I guess. So I've been locally been in town since 1979. Seen quite a bit, ups and downs in this town, and brings us to today, I guess.
Rob, did you get into hanging drywall purely because it's what your family did? It was kind of a family business?
No, it developed. My dad wanted to teach his boys a trade. He wanted us to go to college. All three of us did. The reason he wanted us to have a trade is something to fall back on, and it just ends up, it's kind of something you always knew, especially me as a kid, and it was the easiest job to go get.
Yeah.
Waiting for other jobs and opportunities, and pretty soon you're just involved in it. It took almost a decade for me to accept the fact that that's actually what I was going to do.
As opposed to just
using my education, using my education, applying yourself, and trying to get something else. You know, basically white collar, blue collar, and individually learning that actually being in the trades was more satisfying than I think I would have ever had in any other job. Just, you know, being outside, physical work. The feeling of accomplishment because you get to see what you do almost at least once a week, if not every day. It's a new job site.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of turnover. It's not basically the old cliche sitting at a desk 9 to 5 and getting bored.
Results in the real world.
Yeah, it's tangible.
Yes.
And that's it's a really fun thing. It's not for everybody.
Yep.
And I know a lot of people in the trades, it takes them a while to figure that out, that's actually more intuitive to them, you know, so.
So you were in a niche growing up, in the construction trade niche, since your family, your dad was doing that.
Yeah, and my brothers.
And they were hanging drywall, so you're really kind of shepherded into this niche. So,
well, as my dad said, it was slave labor.
Yeah.
And we took that, and you know, all of us have made a pretty good living at it. So.
And it's what you knew and what was available for you to learn. By the same token, you were on job sites while you were learning the trade and doing the slave labor for your dad. So at some point, I'm thinking you must have looked at other trades and wondered, wow, what would it be like to be a carpenter? What would it like to be a concrete guy?
Well, you always have a dream of doing something different. Especially when you can see certain trades maybe are getting paid more than you, but the learning curve, it's just a whole different scenario when you think about trying to branch and bounce into something completely different. Now, for me personally, it wasn't what I wanted to do. I know some guys that have done other trades, so to me it was always a sports analogy. You know, you could be good at several things or great at one thing.
So you had an opportunity to shine as a drywall guy based on your
it was a good
experience
fit
and education, and good fit.
It was a good fit, but like I said, it took about a decade to realize that because you're always looking over the horizon, hoping something else comes your way as you're building a family and developing some income along, through your 20s. And for me, it was that way. There was that struggle. Is this what I want to do? Even though I had a really good skill set early on.
Yeah.
Because I started learning it early on.
Your skill set in terms of as a drywall hanger.
Right.
Were you ever a taper, or were you strictly?
Oh yeah, no, the whole
yeah.
So
is every drywaller pretty much?
No, I think being that I was raised in the industry, you tend to learn more comprehensively what's going on. Some guys only hang drywall.
Yeah.
They're just installers.
Just hang.
And some guys are only tapers. Yeah, exactly. There are only tapers. Some tapers just don't want to have anything to do with the hanging, and vice versa. And then you have utility guys that know a lot about one aspect, and they might know 50% of the other, and they can mix and match. Whether they could make a living at one or the other usually depends on where they start.
Right.
So
is Mike Wood still doing drywall?
Yeah, I think he's still out there. I mean, he's a name. Like I said, I've been here since '79, and he was here. I saw his name out there when I moved here. So I don't talk to him much anymore. Probably been a decade since I've even crossed paths with him, but I'm sure he's still around. Drywallers just don't.
He was my first drywaller, I think.
Yeah.
But I'm curious because it seems like drywall as a trade, two aspects of it: providing and hanging it, getting the walls covered with drywall, and then actually turning those drywall walls into the finished product. That's the two aspects of the trade.
Well, the easiest way I could say it: drywall's the beginning of the finish. Okay, because you have all the rough end up to that point.
Yep.
So as far as the hangers go, the hangers vary through time and experience and hindsight. They get experience in other trades' mistakes. Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean they know the other trades, but they tend to have a good idea of what's wrong.
Yeah.
So if something's placed wrong, if something's sized wrong, something doesn't feel right, usually the drywall guys know that because they have to fix the problem later if it's not fixed immediately. So
because it's finished work, and that was a very good thing to add to my knowledge, is drywall is really the threshold.
It's the beginning of the finish. It is.
The drywall goes on the walls. We've roughed everything in. We're covering it all up now. Now we're getting in the finished stage.
We always assume all those other trades are done at that point with the rough end.
And you guys have got to fix all the framers' BS.
Well, you got to be careful. We don't fix it because I wouldn't expect the roofer to fix my work.
True.
But we can certainly identify glaring discrepancies.
Yep.
And I mean, obviously sometimes we don't know what's right or wrong, but there are a few dozen things that are traditionally the same error trade-wise, and we can identify that. So that's, a wire that's not hooked up. Okay. A wire that's dangling, going to nowhere.
Right. Walls that are wavy.
Well, to a certain point, generally you can't really see the absolute waviness until the drywall is actually on, because you start to see shadow lines then, especially in the joints and stuff. So walking into a raw house, a few of us can walk in and spot things right off, but generally it doesn't show up until you actually put the drywall on. Now, glaring stuff, obviously. Other things like, say, an exhaust fan in a bathroom, it's not hooked up, easy to see. Easy to miss by someone that's really comprehensive through the house, looking at everything, might miss that one thing. A drywall guy, generally, because we're so close to that surface when we measure, we'll see it.
And when you see things like bowed framing and trimmers that are proud of king studs and the stuff that happens in framing that really make the drywall not want to lay flat, and it's going to interrupt the finished work and the job, at that point, At some point, somebody's got to make a decision. Hey, do we call the general or the job super? Or do we get a framer back here to correct this? Or do we use cardboard shims? Or
Well, see, now you're getting into the politics of it because a couple different scenarios. We call it police work. Okay. Personally, I have a concept. I don't police other people's work.
Yeah.
That's generally for the general contractor. Yeah. He's in control of those guys. He can direct those guys. I can't.
Yeah.
I can spot it, point it out. Mm-hmm. Now we have to decide, can I continue? Am I in on a set price? Okay. How bad is it? Is it recoverable? Because again, it can't ever get to the point, in my opinion, where I'm policing the whole job. Yeah. Because now I am doing the general contractor work.
Shouldn't.
Now, if there's something that prevents me from doing my job, yeah, we have to stop. We have to raise our hand, raise a flag or whatever. But as far as the paper shims and everything goes, drywall is intended to nail tight to the wall, okay? In the old days, when they plastered, they had the long screeds. Yeah. They would fill a lot of that stuff, but drywall is not, the intent of drywall is not to do that,
yeah.
You know? So there's a give and take. You know, there's a line you're going to cross somewhere where now it's costing the drywall subcontractor money, right, compared to someone else should have done this.
Yeah. And that costs, depending upon how major or minor it is, that cost.
Correct.
And if it gets to a certain point, you got to decide whether that cost needs to be passed on to the owner, to the sub that created the problem, or something like that, right? So every job is going to be different, and I would imagine. And my question to you is, are there any jobs where you just get to hang the rock?
Yeah.
And everything's great.
Well, you know, great's a very subjective term. There's industry standards.
Right.
Okay. Now, some people go beyond those standards. Some people stay at them, and some people fall way short. Okay. So again, it gets to the political aspect of it. It's like you have to learn some kind of judgment skill along the way, what's acceptable and what's not. Because theoretically, it's wood, and there's going to be discrepancies in wood, okay? Yep. There's plates, there's nail heads, there's all kinds of things, and generally, you know, a full sheet of drywall is going to kind of span all that and cover it. Yep. But when you start getting, like you said, door jambs that are out of a line and stuff like that, you know, you can make that judgment when you see how bad it is. It's kind of a rabbit hole to go down, because it's like, who do you keep passing it on to? Okay?
Right.
So somebody along the way has to be policing the job to ensure the next guy in, and then those tolerances and limits have to be established.
Yeah, and it seems to me that if you're doing the job the way it's intended for you to do it, and you find glaring discrepancies in the framing that affect the drywalling,
correct,
it's time to alert,
right,
whoever's in charge of general, and let's work together and get this fixed. But also, you know, I'm willing to do a little bit, but I'm not willing to spend a bunch of money because I bid it for X. I'm doing it at a fixed price, right?
From a subcontractor, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's only fair. There's nothing unfair about it,
right? Because
we're working with, like you said, wood. It's an imperfect.
Well, the assumption is that the trades before you did everything they were supposed to do. Even us, I mean, good example, raw door jamb, maybe we leave the job, drywall sticking an inch past. Well, we don't expect someone to cut that off. We should do that. Yeah. But occasionally it happens, so if the door guy does it, no harm done. Yeah. But if we're doing it constantly and that's kind of our MO, yeah, that's something that we should be called on and forced to correct.
How has the work changed since you started? And before you answer that, let me throw out one thing. It seems to me that way back when you started,
a little different.
There was a lot less bullnose and a lot less milk-core, and things were cased a lot more. So
yeah,
you guys weren't the finishers on doors and windows, as opposed to,
correct,
you know, bullnose is crazy in Santa Barbara.
Well, when I started, everything was nailed.
Yeah.
Everything. Yeah, well, very little. You had maybe a pocket door that, you know, like my dad, we didn't even have a screw gun, we had a Yankee. The old screw Yankee thing.
Who even knows? Look, when
Right,
this
right,
comes
right.
up, I'm going to stop the recording and I'm going to show you guys a Yankee.
Yeah.
Because none of you know what a Yankee drill is or screwdriver.
Yeah. So, I mean, he had one in his truck, and so occasionally when there was a pocket door, hey, go get the Yankee, you know, and, you know, and then it was a problem finding screws sometimes because you didn't always have screws, you know. Everything was nailed.
Yep.
And so, like for me, when I first started, for 2 years, all I did was nail. Practice nailing, fingering nails and nailing.
Could you just give us, give the class a basic, just how does drywall work? What's the concept of drywall? In other words, what is it?
Okay.
And why is it made the way it's made? And is it made so that it can accept the mud that you put on it? And what about the nailing? And
short history.
chemicals?
The way it was explained to me, you know, and my apologies if I'm way off base, but this is the way it was always explained to me. Drywall became something back in the 20s or 30s when they were trying to make the lathing and plaster more economical, quicker, basically cheaper.